Greetings! It is I, Tentus Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire. Welcome. So today is going to be an interesting one, because we will be talking about game mechanics as we usually do on most of these things, because the two things I handle are game mechanics and lore. And certainly when it comes to something like 3rd edition 3.5 D&D, which are the topics today, there is a lore to it. But I would really call that Greyhawk lore. And that would be me diving into Greyhawk lore. Or maybe Forgotten Realms lore, or something like that, where these are settings that are accompanying D&D. No. Today we're not diving into lore. Today we're diving in mechanics again. And this is going to be a little bit of a difficult one. So I will preference this with, I might not catch anything. Or, I mean, not everything is the word I want to say. Anything. You see, the difference between D&D 3.0 and D&D 3.5 is small changes. Lots and lots of little small changes throughout the book. There are new spells in 3.5, there are some old spells that have disappeared, there are little changes to various classes, skills, the way things work. Mechanically, everything is fairly similar. Mechanically, they're technically compatible with each other, with very little need for change. If you would use things like feats, prestige classes, bonus classes, equipment, spells, most of it would be fine. In fact, there was a lot of material that wasn't reprinted into the 3.5 version because they didn't need to. When they came out with books, it was either new books or maybe combining some stuff from some of those old books, like one or two things, and then adding a bunch of new things. The complete series of books were an upgrade to the books that, where it would be the 3.0. It would have been like Masters of the Wild were one of them, Song and Silence, Savage Species, Sword and Fist, Tome and Blood. These books that were like a combination of various class books that were these paperback ones, originally in 3.0, were made into hardcover books. They took parts of those, only parts, and updated them into these complete larger hardcover books. This was the evolution of 3.0 to 3.5. And the big thing here, I have to say, which is one of the more important things to note about all this when we're talking about this, and I'm not going to dive too deep into the history today, but 3.5 came out only 3 years after 3.0. That's as long as it was. That's not a long time. It was an update to the rules and simplifications, changes and stuff like that, that unfortunately we can talk about it in something later on where I talk about the reasoning behind a lot of this and maybe diving into some history of D&D and its evolution of its different sets would be a good thing to do and maybe an interesting thing. Let me know in the comments if you want me to talk about that. But 3 years afterwards, we get a new set of core books and a new direction for the way that a lot of books after here are being made. That's what we're exploring today. So, let us dive deep. I'm going to be doing my best here to compare the two books as necessary and discuss them. We're going to walk through the Player's Handbook 3.5 and a little bit of the Monster Manual. I'm not going to do the DMG, but yeah, 10 years for what could be 5.5 for the 5th edition form. That's true. 10 years is plenty enough time for a new edition, I'm going to say. Honestly. And yes, that's an entirely, this is a different discussion, you know. This is something that I want to talk about, like, either on Discussing Tabletop or another episode of this. Certainly, Discussing Tabletop is probably a great place to talk about that. But comparing these two harkens into a lot of what the 5.5, new 5th edition kind of discussion goes to. So, join with me as we dive deep into 3.5 and what the changes were. If you watched my previous 3.0 episode, you're going to have an idea. If you've played Pathfinder or something like this, this is the in-between step between 3rd edition and Pathfinder. So we have an evolution already. So it's going to be interesting to dive deep here and to learn. And I do have a PDF copy of the book, which should open up there. That works. Yes, excellent. So I'm just going to kind of walk through here and kind of just skim through here and try to talk about things where they've changed, where I can point them out. Because there have been little changes all over the place. Plenty of this stuff here is, again, just the same. If you played 3.5, you know, you're pretty much ready for it. Things like here, the ability scores. We are virtually the same. The way to generate ability scores is suggested to be just the same. The 4d6, ignoring the lowest roll, arranging them how you want, is the system they still wanted here. Again, this stuff remained the same. The same could be said where, at the time, races, now species or ancestries. This stuff is basically the same as it was. Also, humans get the same bonuses. Dwarfs get the same bonuses that they did. At the time here, it is notable to say, which changed a lot after here. You can see in Pathfinder, you got 2 bonuses to ability scores, 1 penalty. And then by 5th edition, you just got 2 bonuses, no penalties. That's kind of how the systems evolved. And here, this is a plus to one, a minus to other one, unless you're human where you don't get anything. So the stats were basically very similar here. And I'm not saying that there aren't changes in the language here. It's just that most of this works basically the same at this point in time here. We're not going to reach the major changes to this kind of stuff until we hit classes first. Classes, skills, feats, spells were the big points and changes, along with some various rules, and especially rules when it came to monsters. That's where a lot of the major changes came in. So a lot of this is basically where we were before. No major kind of alterations that we have to know about. Again, changes to language and slightly how things work. Now, again, we have the skill and cross-class skill rules. These work just the same as I talked about previously. The feats are every 3 levels, except at first level where you get 1. Ability scores at every 4 levels. Cross-class is still, or class max ranks are still 1 plus your level. Or no, your level plus 3, I'm sorry. And half of that is still your cross-class. It can have half ranks, but you can't actually spend points in half ranks. It costs you 2 points per cross-class to get a rank in a cross-class skill. So, yeah. A lot of this is very much the same as it was. Saves and all that stuff, we keep the same. We've stayed the same. Hit dice, we've stayed the same. Where we still first start to see a little bit of changes is when we get to Barbarian here. And let me get over in my other book to Barbarian so I can compare them. That's the pages one. That's not the thing. So it's around, what's it, 5? Okay. So at first looking here, if I would compare this, there are differences between these 2 charts. If I look at this, the Barbarian has gained additional abilities. Fast movement is now an ability of Barbarians. This is something they didn't have. Also, Trap Sense is a new one. The Uncanny Dodge Uncanny Dodge has become its own thing. Improved Uncanny Dodge and Trap Sense have all kind of separated out into those old things. Before, they were all kind of under Uncanny Dodge. And there is a... I think there was a... They did give a fast movement for first level, but, like, it's a little different. You know, and illiteracy is actually, like, a class thing here. Unfortunate. But, yeah. The damage reduction basically remains the same. It's just... let me just check where it talks about this over here. It's effectively some of these powers have changed around. So, again, this is not necessarily like a huge change. It's just maybe making it a little bit more understandable. Effectively, in this old chart, if we talk about Rage, Mighty Rage, and that kind of stuff, it would all be under Rage once. Now it's kind of separated out a little bit. It's broken up enough that it makes it a little bit more unique. The same bonuses still apply. Technically speaking, a lot of the same stuff still exists. I think you do still max out at 6 rages a day. Damage reduction still... Actually, damage reduction goes up to 5 slash at 19th when it was 4 slash at 20th before. So they do change, like, the no longer winded after rage was the end one. Mighty Rage now is the 20th level ability, which I believe is just your rage is better now, which I don't think was... You did get an improved rage at 15th level. That was greater rage, which now is 11th level. But you now get a better rage at 20th level too. So they've improved your rage twice now. So see, Barbarian's already better than it was in a way. Your rage is now improved more. The languages is split up a lot more. We've divided up a lot of these different things in, you know, still literate, which is just you know, just unnecessary. But the old Uncanny Dodge, which was like, it got all these different things at different levels, is now split up to Uncanny, Trap Dance, and Improved Uncanny Dodge. Yeah, so... And they do get Indomitable Will now, too. Which is a great thing for them, because it's, hey, a will save against enchantments, which, yeah, it's 14th level, but Barbarian needed something. Will spells for Barbarians were always their greatest weakness. And they talk about ex-Barbarians still. I think they had that before, yeah. So now we see how Barbarian has evolved and gotten a lot better here. Honestly, I think that's the big thing about 3.5 versus 3.0 is they improved a lot of classes. They balanced the classes a lot more. And when we talk about that especially, we have to talk about Bards. Bards is a big one. So we kind of go down through Bards here. So the first thing I'm going to note here for Bards is this stuff in here. 6+ int modifier skills was the first big thing. Then again, this entire chart here is separated out. We still have 0 to 6th level spells in this version. But Bardic music is now split apart a lot of different ways. We see where Inspire Competence, Courage, Suggestion, Greatness. Again, this is a big thing about 3.5 to 3.0 is in 3.0, I would have just gained Bardic Performance at first level and then had to keep track of when it updated throughout the levels. Now they split these abilities that would have lasted throughout your entire level up into actual things that happen in level up and mention when they're here now. So I know, like, oh, I get Inspire Competence here, I get Inspire Courage here as a certain plus. I see where the updates are happening in these class abilities. Yeah. So we still have, you know, spells functioning a lot way they do. The big thing here is the Bardic spell list has also changed a bunch. So that's another thing that I can talk about is they improved the Bardic spell list a lot in this edition. In 3.5. We will talk about it when we get to it. Bardic Knowledge remains pretty much the way it was. Actually, no, I think it actually gets better. No, it's the same. It's the same. I'm just checking. So here's where the big Bardic music comes. And they do still have it functioning the same way with how they list it. But now you know at what level these things come about. And you still have, like, ranks and perform that you need for a bunch of these things. But, you know, it also has, like, at this level. So these first ones, you need at least 3 ranks in perform for these early ones. But this one, you need the level and perform for competence, level and ranks for this one. So there still is a need for a perform skill. But, again, we're looking better at these. We still have Courage, Countersong, Fascinate, Competence, there's the Courage, yeah. Competence. What other ones did they have? Suggestion they had in the old one. and suggestion. But now we have some new ones with greatness, freedom, and heroics. These are 3 new ones that we didn't have. We ended up on greatness before, which means, and that was, again, at 9th level or 12 or more ranks and perform. So that meant in the previous 3.0, our bardic abilities maxed out at 9th level. Yeah. Now, at least up until 15th level, you get more stuff. And mass suggestion, you know, at 18th level. So you get more stuff in the bard. So late level bard has improved here. Again, the spell list is improved. You get more skills per level. This version of the bard vastly made bard more playable in 3.5 compared to 3.0. This is the point in time where bard was super unpopular in 3.0 because it was just bad. This is where the improvements come that make it a playable class. So we can see again the evolution of this as it has. So clerics, we don't have a lot of changes when it comes to clerics that we can talk about. Clerics are fairly much the same. There is a few things, some clarifications about alignment-based things, and they did also talk a little bit more about spontaneous casting, yeah, I'd have to go down here to this. And this is with a spontaneous casting here. They now specify that you can do the mass spells and stuff. So basically, before any kind of things like the mass spells, which I don't even know if it existed or not. I got to be honest. I don't know if the mass spells existed in the old version of it. I'd have to check the book here. I think it actually, if I check my notes here. Yeah, the mass healing spells didn't exist. The spontaneous healing kind of maxed out at 4th level. Because after that, there was no healing spells. They added the mass spells in this edition and allowed them to be added to spontaneous casting, meaning that, again, when you're getting those higher levels, you still have something to do. And it's not like, okay, yes, you're still getting new spells, you're still getting new feats, but they wanted something that is at higher levels. I'm getting cleric stuff, I'm getting bard stuff, I'm getting barbarian stuff, I'm getting stuff that is more than just the random choices I have, it's the class stuff that I'm actually getting. Because as much as the spell list can be very cleric, there are plenty of spells you could choose from which other classes would have, and then it's sort of like, well, I've got, you know, my spell here, which, yes, maybe I'm the one that cast it, but maybe I'm not the only one that cast it. Maybe druids can cast this one, but I like this spell and I want to use it. I'm not feeling any different than druid. Speaking of druid, we did get some updates to the druid, too. Again, I'm referencing the old book here, plus some things. So big things here are a couple of things that we can talk about. There's about 3 things here for the druid that are updates to talk about. First off is spell list. Spell list was expanded here. There were more spells added. So again, this is the entire thing that's been happening here is in 3.0, the classes that had the best spell list were Sorcerer Wizard, followed by Cleric, and then followed by Druid, Bard, and then the half casters of like Paladin, or quarter casters, or third casters of like Paladin, Ranger, and stuff like that, for how good their spell lists were. So Druids were pretty mediocre. They improved them a lot here. Other than this, a lot of the wild shape stuff stays the same. And a lot of the other abilities basically stay the same. They might change around what levels you get things and stuff like that. So again, readjustments of where things are in levels and stuff is a big thing that's happening between these. So if you compare the two, the classes, they tend to get things more spread out, or at least at more reasonable levels, and you maybe get even a little bit more. That is something that is very accurate with the update here. Things like elemental, you do get elemental, you get like plant shape, which you didn't get before, and you do get elemental over here, but you also get things like huge elemental at 20th level. So you used to get elemental at 18th level. Well, no, you did get it first at 16th level. But now you still get elemental. You get better elemental later on. You still get the huge creatures and stuff like that. The big things other than the spells are, first off, wild empathy. If you don't recall, when I was talking about skills previously, which I was, one of the big things was animal empathy was a skill. But it was only a ranger or druid skill, that they're the only ones that could learn it, and it was a class skill for them. So you know what they made it? A class ability you don't have to spend skill points on. Yes, they made it decent and just part of your class, and I don't have to waste skill points on this to have this ability. That was a big thing for it. And the other thing is they redid animal companions. If you remember last time, the last time we had it, it was based on hit dice of the animals for what animals we could have. There were ways to cheat the system I talked about, magic items that were pretty expensive that could give you more hit dice. That was something from the Wild book, which I said the name of earlier when I was naming them. The Masters of the Wild book had that magic item in it. It doesn't work anymore. That magic item is gone because we've updated this now to an animal companion chart. Look at that. Wow. And examples of animal companions, and if you want to have bigger animal companions, examples of their stats at higher levels, where you take this chart and subtract, like, say, like here, this chart minus 15 at 16th level, so you'd only gain the first level bonus for having a dire tiger. Yeah. And they give you an idea of what these first level animal companions would be. They give a list of them. And again, so now we have animal companions that get better as they level up with rules for leveling them up. Or if you want a cooler, bigger animal, they also have rules for that too. Now I'm just not relying on hit dice. All animals can be basically equal and just as awesome. And you can choose any animal and level up with you. This was a big update for it. And this is kind of more of a modern version of Druid's Animal Companion, as we have now evolved. So the big thing about fighters is feat list. It's just feat descriptions have changed a bunch of places. It's hard to go through all the different changes of feats and spells. I'm not going to do that, but I will tell you a lot of them did change. And so the fighter's basically the same. It's just that the feats they have access to, what's a fighter feat and how they work, has been altered. So again, fighters didn't really need a lot of work. But what we did work on is the feats that they can choose from. Yeah, the combat feat list has been evolved. It's better than it was. And there's a lot of clarification and more options and stuff like that too. In the base book, you know. More books can be added, of course, too, as with many of these things. Now we get to our good friend Monk here. So, Monk had its issues, to say the least. That was one of those things that, certainly, when I talked about it before, it had some problems. It's been overhauled a lot. So, we can start, of course, with, in the old book, this chart here, the Flurry of Blows chart, was an unarmed attack bonus chart. And in the old unarmed attack bonus chart, effectively, it was the same base attack that you'd have, except that you get multiple attacks at -3 rather than the -5. So, at the 20th level, you'd have 15, 12, 9, 6, 3. You'd have 5 attacks. Now they've overhauled Flurry of Blows to make it, rather than you get attacks more often, it starts out with basically a version of 2-weapon fighting, which we'll talk about how 2-weapon fighting changed, because it did here. And you start by taking a -2 to both attacks, but I can attack twice. And then you get like an improved, you get extra attack here. At here you get the improved 2-weapon fighting. Also, you eventually get rid of the penalty to that 2-weapon fighting of the -2 you'd have to each, until it's just normal attacks. So now you would get 2 extra attacks, and you can see this goes up to 3 extra attacks and then the 2 iterative attacks. So basically you flurry with 2 extra attacks at normal attack bonus. And the D20 becomes 2D10, which is technically a little bit of better dice. You're going to, on average, have a little bit more damage. AC bonus stays the same. Speed bonus, well, now becomes a bonus. Before, it was your unarmored speed would be this, and wasn't dependent on what you were. Your species/race did not matter. Now, instead of that, you just get a bonus to it, which means if I'm a faster or slower creature, I'm going to have faster or slower there. Still have all good saves, still have the same skill points there. Again, the big thing is the Flurry of Blows has been upgraded heavily. Weapons have been kind of... This entire section of weapons is actually a lot different too. They've altered how this looks, the weapons and armor proficiencies, significantly. They've simplified it a lot. You still get evasion, fast movement, still mind, key strike at 4th level, which has its ability. Do you still have stunning blow? Let's see if you do or not. What level did you get stunning attack at originally? Stunning attack was 1st level. Huh. Alright. Oh, that's right. Stunning Fist became feat, so not just monks can use it. So the Stunning Fist now becomes a feat, but they get bonus feats at certain levels, so you have options of taking Stunning Fist or another ability if you wanted to. So you don't have to have the Stunning Fist. You can if you want, but you have other options. So instead of, like, certain abilities shoehorned, you get these bonus feats in the updated version of it that give you more options that you can do. I think that's one of those things that they do a bunch of, is options here and there. Still Mind, Key Strike, Slow Fall, Purity Body, Wholeness of Body, Evasion, Diamond Body, Abundant Step, Diamond Soul, Quivering Palm, Timeless Body, blah, blah, blah. A lot of the abilities they still had before. Evasion's the same. Still Mind, Deflect Arrows became a feat. Still Mind, Slow Fall, yeah. Purity Body, Improved Trip became a feat, so it's another feat option you have there. Wholeness of Body. Leap of the Clouds went away because it's just dumb. Key Strike is no longer at 10th level. Key Strike's now at 4th level and levels up, and it includes stuff for the new damage reduction type, because damage reduction has changed. We'll talk about that, but the Key Strike then very much so changed the way that it works, because damage reduction switched around, and it's on a lower level now too that you start getting it. Diamond Soul still spell resistance. Don't have Abundant Step anymore. No, you got Abundant Step. And then Quivering Palm. Diamond Body, Diamond Soul. Timeless Body, Timeless Savage, Empty Body, Perfect Self. So a lot of this remains the same, except now we have a couple abilities became feats. Now, so that other people, like fighters, could take them if they took the feat chain. So a fighter could learn some unarmed abilities / martial arts. But now they have, at certain levels, bonus feats. Key Strikes have changed, and Fury Blows have changed. Honestly, this Fury of Blow stuff and the change in the dice, which they do have smaller, larger monks too, this vastly improved Monk too. Monk became much more viable also. It's sort of like the classes that didn't need a lot of work didn't get a lot of work. The classes that needed work got the help that they need, and they certainly did. Let's talk about Paladin a little bit, because Paladin did get some updates too. So the big thing about Paladin is, well, one thing, more spikes. The other thing is, your mount doesn't have to be around all the time. So, see, now you get to 5 times a day Smite Evil, where, if I'm comparing it to the old chart, Smite Evil was how many times per day? I have to look this up. once a day at 2nd level, add a charisma modifier. Wow! So Smite Evil was a 2nd level ability, which now becomes a 1st level ability, and it was just once a day. Just once. You still get the special mount, but now the entire thing about the special mount is you can summon it. Meaning that it doesn't have to be with you all the time. Wow. I don't have to have this thing with me constantly. Isn't that so nice? Detect Evil remains pretty much the same. Divine Grace, Lay on Hands. I think the Lay on Hands is still Paladin level times Charisma bonus. I think which the same time each day per number of hit points times their level. So it's the exact same amount of hit points, so that doesn't change. The auras are fairly standard. Aura of Courage, Divine Health is kind of the same. Turn Undead at 4th level that you still have. It was at 3rd level. It's moved to 4th level. Still has spells. Pretty much the same there. So the big things here are, of course, actually spiting more than once a day. Because, you know, this great move that we have for fighting evil that we want to use against enemies that, you know, makes us pretty decent. We'd like to use it more times per day than one. And, yeah. And it also says, specifically in the old one, if a paladin smites a creature that is not evil, it has no effect, is used up for the day. That still happens here. But the good news is you might have more than one smite. That's the only advantage, is like, oops, I accidentally used my smite. Well, I have an extra one because I'm higher level. I used up my one per day forever. And the mount has similar stats to the Animal Companion here. Now, Ranger does get a big update here, because before, all that Ranger got was track and favored enemy. That was it. That was all you got. Favored enemy kind of remained the same, but if you look here, Ranger got a whole bunch more stuff. Ranger was another bad one. Again, like, people played clerics, people played fighters, people played rogues, people played wizards. You know what they didn't play? Bards, druids, rangers, monks, paladins. Why? They sometimes played them, but they were all worse. They were all so much worse, unfortunately. And you could just feel it, unfortunately, too. You know, there were some other class features, like the 2-weapon fighting, like, bonus that they got, but it's just, it wasn't there for being a decent class. So, first things, we still have track, we still have favored enemy. The wild empathy, as I talked about, is now part of the class. But here, in this section, is where we start getting new stuff, like endurance as a bonus feat, choosing a combat style where you're either archery or 2-weapon style, getting an animal companion, which is basically a druid's animal companion, though lower level. 1/2 of the ranger level is so basically they get up to a 10th level animal companion of a druid. Improved combat style for more bonuses for those two things. The woodland stride, swift tracker, evasion. They didn't get evasion before. Combat style mastery, camouflage, hide in plain sight. This all stuff was added in. The Ranger had so many problems if we actually, like, break it down. Like, I didn't talk about it. But again, the Ranger didn't get a lot. This version of Ranger gets a lot in comparison. You can see where a lot of the things come in that are really good abilities to add into this. This stuff is all an improvement. Ranger is now much more of a class on their own, rather than just be a person who hunts things, kind of, which is what they were before. It's a vast improvement. They took a step in here, and also they get more skill points, so they're another 6+ intelligence skill points rather than 4. Again, because they have a wide variety of skills they use, and they want to be good at that. So we've seen the improvements. Now this also chart here is the first time that we look at the new enemy types chart. And we can briefly talk about this here, because this is important here. If we compare this chart here to the favorite enemy chart in the old edition, they are very different. So, humanoid type for favorite enemy is still, I believe, an outsider type are still kind of the same, but now we actually divide them up into, like, you know, these are the types. These are the types. We have aberration animal. Beasts is gone. Beasts have been split to, now it's either an animal or a magical beast. That's it. So the beast type goes away, which was supposed to be something. Beast type in 3.0 was basically, it's not a real animal, but it could be a real animal. That was the rules for a beast type. So there's a lot of beasts in there and animals. Now they've been either, if it was something that could be just considered an animal in a fantasy world, it's just an animal now. Or it's a magical beast. We have constructs, dragons, elementals, fae, giants, again, all the humanoid types, magical beasts. We now have monstrous humanoids, which are a thing, which splits apart for some other things. Oozes, the outsiders have been split apart. Plants, shape changers are gone to being a subtype, undead and vermin. So, this is a type chart that's very similar to what it will be in Pathfinder. But we can see that this is an evolved chart now, that it, as much as it's a larger chart, it's also technically a simpler chart. The points that are there larger are humanoid and outsider, and why is that? Just because they specified them more. And splitting the monstrous humanoids from normal humanoids was also a very good thing, because that's like things like minotaurs and other things that aren't quite giants have their own type then. They're separated out enough. And again, we're not quite at the chart for Pathfinder, but we can take a look at this now under Ranger. And this is another change in evolution. Now we look at Rogue. And again, Rogue is fairly similar. Things like trap finding at first level they have now. The way that Uncanny Dodge split apart for Barbarian with things like trap senses and all the other stuff, we can see that they also have that now. Sneak attack goes up all the same as it did. Excuse me. And then we start getting these special abilities, which Rogue's got special abilities before. We talked about them a little bit. I believe the special ability chart is pretty much the same. It was crippling strike, defensive roll, improved evasion, opportunist, skill mastery, slippery mind. Yep, they're all the same. But now you can also gain a feat, a bonus feat in place of a special ability. Oh, you could do that before. Okay. So, a lot of the rogues stayed the same. The Uncanny Dodge changed. That was the big thing. And, you know, Trap Sense became its own thing. Trap Finding became something. So, it was just the split in the wording for Uncanny Dodge and stuff like that is the big thing that affected Rogue. And that's really all they got. Oh, I'm sorry. I did miss something for Ranger that I do have to mention, which is important to talk about. Yeah. Where is that? Is that changing it? Did I? Or is it the same? Oh, yeah, here's the thing for Ranger to talk about. Hit dice decreased. Their hit dice actually went down. They balanced them more out with others and didn't give them the fighter hit dice anymore. So that's kind of a point in time where, in order to balance out everything else they gave, they nerfed something a little bit. So we have a hit dice decrease. Strangely enough. Rather than increase. But yeah, the class is honestly playable now. So There are some changes to Sorcerer we can talk about. There's not a lot. Some of the things that talk about when we talk about Sorcerer is some changes in... Where is that other chart? I think there's some changes, like, in parts of the spells and stuff like that, too. They talk about familiars here, which they, get familiar. Spells are largely the same as they were before. Most of what is happening here is still... They still pick up spells a whole level later, which isn't great. It's a leftover here that they're not getting rid of. I think the big thing that we have here, and when we get to it, is... Where is that? Under the spells here. Here. This entire thing here. Where I do not think this was... I'm just checking the old Sorcerer to make sure, because I'm using a couple of places to check it. As I said, I'm comparing the old Sorcerer to the new one when I'm talking about this. Yeah, this section here is new. This is the ability to swap out spells at even levels, meaning I could retrain a spell that I have known. This was a big thing to help Sorcerers a lot, as I could get a higher level spell, a version of it, that is better in all ways, and I don't have to keep the lower level spell then. I can get something else that I have one spell to fill one role and fill a different role. This was an improvement to them. The charts here are slightly different, but most of it remains the same. The big things that we have for Wizard, which also we could have seen under Sorcerer, is... the familiar information has been updated here. So this entire thing on familiars on here and here, especially with stats and stuff, this is updated stuff, similar to like the Druid and things. So it's a very evolved version of this here. They still get bonus feats. They don't mention them here. They still get bonus feats, which for whatever weird reason they don't mention it on the thing, and they get Scribe Soul at first level. Still, Wizards are mostly the same. The big thing is like an update to school specialization here. And they talk about it here. It's not like a major update, but they do update the specialization rules here. You'd have to read through them all and in here and stuff like that, but effectively that's where Wizards change. Multi-class still remains a very big part of this entire thing. And now we get done classes and move on to skills. So, skills are a place where another bunch of changes have occurred. And it is an important part of changes. So, I can list off very easily this list here as I kind of move down to the new chart. As you can see, the skill totals here that people get per level. This kind of stuff has technically been updated. Bards get more. Druids remain the same. Monks remain the same. Paladin, Rangers get more. Rogues get the same. Sorcerers same. This chart here is updated. So in the old chart, we had X's. We don't have those X's anymore. That's the first thing, which means you can't get that skill is excluded by another class. So now anything that would be excluded to a class becomes just a class ability. They've also split the knowledge skills a lot more. Now we have the set number of knowledge skills, which this becomes the entire thing is nowadays when we have a knowledge-based skill, most of the time it's specifically that skill. Granted, something like Pathfinder 2nd Edition does also have the lore skills, which are more specific, but they're oftentimes given out a lot more freely. As you know about this thing, and then you also have your more common knowledges, that's just more specific ones you can get. And the common knowledges like nature, occult, and religion and all that stuff still exist as skills. Same within 5th edition. You still have Arcana, you know, religion and stuff like that. That exists. But now we still have a lot of the dots of what's class and cross-class. We still have the untrained key abilities. But other than this chart has changed. This chart is technically, even with this, smaller. If I compare them side by side, it would look to be around the same size. But we now have a much bigger knowledge section. So, yeah, how has this chart shrunk? Well, first off, alchemy is now part of craft. Craft now, you choose a craft that you want, just like before you would actually choose a craft that you'd want, or choose a profession that you'd want. Those were actual things. Choose a perform you want. Well, no, it used to just be all perform. Perform is updated too. We'll talk about that. But alchemy is not longer a separate skill. It's now craft alchemy. Now empathy is gone. Innuendo is part of bluff. Intuit direction is part of survival, which is a new skill. So we've rolled a couple of things, wilderness lore and intuit direction, into a survival skill. Perform now, as I said, works like craft or profession, where you choose a certain type of perform, and you could take it multiple times from multiple different ones. Read lips was rolled into spot. Ride used to be for specific mounts, which is something I missed when I was talking about it before. Now ride is just a general ride skill. Pickpocket goes into scry hands, or sleight of hand, and scry was removed, and now you just rely on the scry spell. So, we have now evolved the chart and kind of gotten rid of redundancies, spell-related, class-related things. Those aren't skills anymore. Those are either connected to your class or stuff. And we've rolled things that theoretically should be together in together. Like, we combined a couple of skills into, like, this new survival skill. Use rope is still there. That can be rolled into other stuff. That will be rolled into stuff like, just like listen and spot will be rolled in, and search will be rolled all into perception eventually. But for now, they're still separate. And gather information will eventually be rolled into diplomacy. Like, for now, we've seen the idea of making it simpler, a smaller chart, more compact skills is evolving here, and certainly is a good thing. This is an evolution of the skill lists that improves them greatly. Anyway, we can roll on, though. We don't have to dive into the skills here, because other than that, there are differences in individual skills, but a lot of it remains fairly similar. It's just places where I've talked about where things have been rolled in and stuff. Now the skills have multiple uses, or, you know, slightly different rulings for different things that have been added into them, updates to the basic rules that were in these skills from before. Again, fairly similar to what it was in 3.0. As we can all see here, balance and improvement is a pretty big thing here. And that's the thing here is, this is a difference that I can say is pretty big here in 3.0 to 3.5, which calls for why it's a 0.5. Certainly the fighter is pretty much the same, but we look at the monk, we look at the ranger, we look at, you know, the bard, we look at a lot of other classes, and they are, some of them are very, very different from what they were. Some of them are pretty much the same, which isn't necessarily bad. Feats have had a lot of wording changes. A lot of wording changes across a lot of feats. So that's going to be something hard to talk about, but I can talk about a few of them. Ambidextry and 2-weapon fighting are now 1 feat instead of 2. Expertise is now combat expertise. Weapon finesse, which is something that is, again, maybe we didn't talk about. Weapon finesse, you used to have to choose it for an individual weapon when you took weapon finesse, like weapon focus. Now it's for every light weapon. So you only have to take weapon finesse once. Sunder is in the Sunder special attack, and improved Sunder feat was added to avoid attacks of opportunity. Shield expert was rolled into improved shield bash. And here's an important thing that we can talk about in the rules, that here was the first time they actually mentioned it. This is something in Pathfinder, which, because it's something that my gaming group left over from 3.0, and unfortunately never really changed a lot of. And I talked about this with Buccaneers of the Shackled Sea. Improved critical didn't stack with other things that enhanced criticals, because it started saying it here. So, multiple sources of critical improvement used to stack. Yeah. That was 3.0. That was something I dealt with. That's something me as a DM dealt with, and other DMs I played with dealt with. So you can see that there is an evolution of a lot of abilities here. The list here. New, better wording and a lot of things here. There are still things like dodge as a dodge bonus against a certain target. You know, the charts are in such a way that's a little bit better for seeing where things compare. Oh, hey, we can't get away without mentioning power attack is actually a little different than it was before. We do have to mention that. So as you recall, I talked about power attack when it came to feats. I mentioned it in my last time where I said, oh, it's pretty gross where I can trade up to my base attack bonus. Yeah, I don't think they got that low, but they got like down to like you could roll like an 11 in critical, or critically threat at least. It got bad. There might have been ways to get down to 5 or anything. I don't know. There were some weapons that were like 4 numbers to begin with, and then if you like triple that, yeah, or quadruple that, it gets pretty bad. Power attack has here that if you're wielding a two-handed weapon, you double the number you subtract. So two-handed weapons and power attack became gross. Now if you're going to use power attack, you really want a two-handed weapon. Because at 20th level, it's no longer minus 20 to my attack plus 20 damage. If I'm using a greatsword, it's minus 20 to my attack plus 40 to my damage. You're welcome. Yeah, that was a improvement. We'll call that an improvement. We'll pretend it's an improvement. It really is. It's pretty gross. Yeah. Let's talk about some more stuff here. So I can't dive too much into a couple other things that I want to talk about here, but we can dive into a few things. We do want to... all the stuff here is pretty standard. It's pretty much the same. There are some equipment changes. That is something I want to talk about. There have been equipment upgrades and changes in this chart. Again, it's a lot of small changes throughout it, so it's not like I don't want to go too in-depth to individual things here, but there's little places where information, like the first thing that you can notice is the small medium listing is automatically in here. That was an improvement here as part of it. Usually some like specific weapon information, you know, was upgraded a lot of times here too. So we do have updates on weapons and equipment. Again, it's little things here and there throughout the entire charts that just improve stuff. Same with like armors and stuff too, and equipment. It's all little updates here and there that you can find if you were exploring it. So there are some things that changed in combat we do want to mention. Yeah. Okay. First off, we kind of have fixed to certain things that, again, were in combat that I didn't really talk about in the previous time. And that's one of those things is when I just went over basics, there are things that I missed. Certainly. And one of the things that we can talk about that is gone here, and I want to try to find it here if I can. Well, attacks of opportunity have been clarified a little bit. Threat and attacks of opportunity have been improved. Now on the battle grid, everything's a square. That's another thing that's actually improvement. There were things that weren't squares, and this is just it's a standardization on battle grids. Just make things, you know, a square. Rules for squeezing have been added. They didn't exist before. Yeah, again, the entire thing with attacks of opportunity, this has been like overhauled. That the language has been changed, and this is easier to read and understand. You'd have to still read through it to get through all it, but they just fixed a lot of the way the wording worked, which is good. Definitely good. Where is the rules for that? So, yeah. There's some things listed on this site that's talking about general combat stuff that is a lot harder to talk about because you'd have to find it here to do it. Jump distance is a lot more simplified. Damage reduction's been overhauled. We'll talk about that in a second here. Prestige classes are made easier to understand. They're a little more viable. Prestige builds have a more standard formula. You know, they don't have like a save progression kind of thing too. Squeezing is adding. There's no more facing rules. So there were some facing rules, which made a difference. You know, where you were facing in combat. Those went away. So a lot of little things here in the combat have just been improvement, but basically the gist of combat remains the same. And that's an important part about it. The gist of this is the same. You still die the exact same way. Things like that. Saving throws are very same. The initiative is basically similar. Just changing some language around, improving some things. Casting a spell, the various actions, their attack of opportunities, and do it. Using special abilities, you know, things like this. The move equivalent actions, full round actions. Special abilities are on 142. Oh yeah, they talk about the like 5-foot step, dying and stuff here, movement position, tactical movement. I think it's probably where they talked about facing before. It was tactical movement before, probably. Concealment they talk about. Flanking is mentioned still. It's still +2 bonus, helpless defenders. Special attacks. Now they clarified bull rush, charge, grappling, disarming, feinting, a lot more. These things became more standardized. Mounted combat, overrun, sunder. These things were there still, but like, though they're not to the improvement that Pathfinder First Edition took to fix a lot of stuff here, they still did improvements for a lot of this stuff, fortunately. Cover and concealment work very much. I think we don't have subdual damage anymore. Now we do have non-lethal damage, I believe is what it's called now. Finally, is it? I have to find it here. Man. Yeah, non-lethal damage. They changed it from subdual to non-lethal damage. So they talk about that. And they basically simplified the subdual damage concept a little bit, but kept the idea of trying to knock someone out as an actual thing that you could do. Again, we still had disarm, bull rush, grapple, and stuff like that before overrun, trip. But now, if we go down to the grapple section, like if I compare this to the old grapple section, it is in fact a lot simpler. Grapple checks right here. It's the same grapple check as it was. Size bonus is still there. Grappling still sucks if you're being grappled by something. They have the rules for it simplified. The consequences, if you're grappled, what you can do. Which, one of the things they added to, if you're grappled, this here. The draw a white weapon and damage an opponent and draw a light weapon if you're grappled weren't there before. In 3.0, if you're grappled, you're kind of screwed to a degree because you couldn't really do a lot except trying to escape. Now, at very least, you could draw a weapon like a dagger and try to stab whoever's grappling you. So, improvement there, we can see. So there are a lot of like little improvements on the way that rules work a lot in here. And then we got adventuring and stuff like that and stuff. And let's talk about magic and spells, because I'll just leave it on this section here to talk about and go over some things that there is changes in buff spells. I like the way that they work a little bit. There are a lot of new spells. Some spells were removed from the game, either rolled into another spell, renamed, or completely gone. Like spells that were removed: Animal Friendship, Emotion. There was Emotion Fear, Emotion Friendship. Emotion Friendship became Charm Person. Emotion Hate, Mass Haste. Negative Energy Protection became Death Ward. Nistiel's Undetectable Aura became Nistiel's Magic Aura. Polymorph Other became Baleful Polymorph. Polymorph Self became Polymorph. Simple Discord, Simple Hopelessness went away. Change Self became Disguised Self. Charm Person or Animal became Charged Animal. Circle of Doom, Inflict White Wounds Mass. Command Plants, Control Plants, etc., etc. There's a lot more that just alter. You know, there were a bunch of new spells that were added. A lot of the mass spells were added. Some greater spells. Things like False Life, Acid Splash was added for like a small spell you could do. Waves of Exhaustion, Waves of Fatigue, these were added here. Things that show up in Pathfinder. Domain spells were changed a bit different. Some of them were either changed because the spells were changed. Some of them were removed from the domains entirely. Some spells just had spell effects changed, like Call Lightning had its change. Heal and Haste and Harm all had big changes to them. How they worked. I could actually probably go to Heal, Harm, and stuff if we can quickly go to it. Let's go to 150. See how far we are. We're nowhere near close to it. 1 second. That's the charts. Yeah, I can go to those three. Heal, Harm, and Haste are good examples we can use, because those are standard spells oftentimes for a lot of these things. I can get an idea where it is in the other book too, by doing it manually over here. Here we are, Harm and Haste. Let's go to this version of it, which is in this book, which I will go to 210. Let's see how close I am. Nowhere near it, because it's a bigger book. 230, 240. Here we go. Cool. So, Harm, before, was cause the subject lose all but 1d4 of their hit points. Now it does 10 damage per level to a maximum of 150 damage. Can't reduce below 1. It's a little better. It's a little less mean. Heal also heals that same amount that Harm does, but also removes a bunch of things and doesn't remove a bunch of stuff. Heal used to completely heal them and basically heal all their hit points and stuff. Heal and Harm used to be a lot more powerful, is basically what happened, and they got nerfed. Haste was one creature. This becomes one creature per level. So Haste and Mass Haste were kind of rolled into one. And the bonuses were changed a lot. It used to be in 3.0 plus 4 bonus to AC. And an extra partial action. Now it's just an extra attack on a full attack. And it'll slow place. So it became mass, and it became technically just a lot better because it's not as broken and gross. So there was some like brokenness to it that happened. So let's talk a little bit about damage reduction now. I might be able to go to the monster manual, honestly. Let's do that, I think. I think we're pretty much done with this book here, probably. Let me just zoom down to the bottom and see if there's anything else in this book. just some glossary. All right, then we will open up that book. And if I was to EX that out, would it go to this book? Let's try it. It did! Boom, boom, boom. Hey, I make good plans. I readjusted that perfectly. So, I talked about the type changes of monsters, and that's a pretty big thing. A lot of things is, there have been changes in monsters. We have to go to like 300, I think, to get to stuff in the back here. There have been plenty of changes in monsters that have come about. But here's the damage reduction section that we want to kind of address right now. So, as you recall, when we talked about it before, the damage reduction used to be a number / a plus modifier. That's no longer here. We now split damage reduction to a lot of different ways. So some monsters, damage reduction to need bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing to overcome it. So it would say something like 5 slashing. Some need specific metals. I know. So like silver for a werewolf, cold iron, or stuff like that. Some might need adamantine. Others just need magic weapons. It has to be at least a plus. Some need alignment things. Some have epic, where it has to be a +6 enhancement or better. Some need a specific alignment to overcome. The numbers that they're resisting also dropped a lot. So like when like a Iron Golem used to be like 50 + 4, 50 + 5, it's now a lot less. So it's now like, actually I could probably look up Iron Golem, honestly. Can I look that up? Let me open that up, see. Let me do this. Under G for Golem. Let's go to that. Hey, Iron Golem. We can get rid of the bookmarks then. We can look here. Its damage reduction is now 10 adamantine. It used to be 50. Think about that. It used to reduce the damage it would be dealt by 50. It was insane. So now 15 is the highest number of damage reduction we'll have. Meaning you could still fight something, actually. It just means small hits won't hit. You need if you don't have adamantine, you have to have a lot of strength and power to damage things still. These kind of improvements made monsters so much better. Yeah, it's right above my forehead, right here. So we can see that these are big changes. And again, for monsters, there are a lot of stat changes around. You know, we don't longer have the beast shape to change shape. Energy resistance is per hit now, not per round. Because it used to be per round and kind of suck. There's no electricity subtype. Just electricity immunity. Cold and fire subtypes are better mechanics. Psionics have changed a lot. 3.5 has their own version of psionics, so they've been evolved into that too, for where they're at. Reptilian subtype is only for humanoids. Let's see here. There are plenty of monsters that are stronger now. Dragons and outsiders got a big stat boost. So if I would compare the... I guess I'll just do this again, because we can have it slightly over. Like, the dragons that were over here in this thing, like the chromatic, the true dragons, they all got buffs. This is a buff from what it was. You know, like the black dragon, we look at it and it's like, you know, what they are. This stuff is buffed. Let me compare it to... I don't have to have that player's handbook. I can have this monster manual open, which I can also use to go to Dagron. I can combine these two and look at them so nicely. Yeah, like... granted, like, it's not maybe a big buff, but like a Great Worm Black Dragon used to be 21. Now it's 22. The Wormling used to be 2, now it's 3. And so, like, okay, the buffs here are small, but that's a buff nonetheless. Like, this kind of stuff and standardization have been all, like, this standardization chart is a lot better than it was. Because this standardizes a lot of things with stats and stuff that make it really easy to, like, compare the different things. That this builds, you know, them very well. I still forget that there's a level adjustment here for these things. I forget they list level adjustments in so many places. Oh, God. So, I'm going to tell you, I can explain to you what this is. If you wanted to play a Wormling Black Dragon, it would be 3 level adjustment, plus you'd have to pay for the 4 hit dice. Meaning you'd have to be at least a 7th level character to be a Wormling Black Dragon in-game. Stats were right there. The Juvenile would be 17th level before you start taking class levels, I guess. Yeah, that was a thing in this book. A lot of creatures had this level adjustment stuff, which it's really supposed to be the adjustment plus hit dice before you can start taking class levels. But some DMs just allowed you to take the adjustment without the things, which it doesn't balance it. You need the hit dice to balance it. We discovered that long and experimenting with it, that's one of those problems is this exists here. This is a thing. It wasn't there before. Advancement rules are still there. You know, a lot of this other stuff remains the same. But, like, we compare outsiders, dragons, things like that. There's a lot of improvements in the monsters. The damage reduction's not as gross. Again, typings and subtypings and resistances have all been altered and improved. It's a lot of little things. And a lot of those same little things could probably be said for the DMG. I'm going to say here, I was, in my cursory research and stuff, and then looking and reading through these books, I didn't dive as much into the DMG because I didn't find anything that helped me reference it. Like, I found some websites that helped me reference this stuff when I was comparing the 2 books for this. So there are changes in the DMG. I just couldn't give you them off the top of my head. But, again, what I'm saying here is what I'm showing is it's a lot of little changes. And the thing is, and this is the big thing I'm going to say here, they are not as compatible as you think. What do I mean by that? A black dragon, let's take for example, an adult black dragon in 3.0 is, say for certain things like damage reduction, which did exist, so you can see damage reductions here, weaker than the other. Yeah, actually, damage reduction remained about the same. It still gets to 20 magic here as a worm, and it got to 20 plus 3 over here. So maybe you can overcome its damage reduction easier here. But a lot of these stats are better. AC is now standardized to species. Attack bonus, base attack is kind of there. They standardize a lot of things differently. I think it actually has higher to attack, maybe. No, the stats are pretty same. Attack bonus used to be 46, which was just its, I guess, actual attack bonus. Now it's, what, 27 plus 13? It's 50 to hit you as a black dragon. That's higher than it was. Saves are kind of the same. Breath weapon, generally... oh, this black dragon's by age. Okay, so this is just black dragons by age here. And then black dragon age part 2. So you have the 2 charts to do the stats. I see. Sorry. Just trying to read these and understand them and stuff like that. But, that's the thing is, yeah. Reading it out here, the old attack bonus is actually what it would have been. It would have been just... Oh, I guess it gets the penalty from size, so it might still be 46. I have to remember it's gargantuan. again, CR has changed a little bit. Abilities have changed a little bit. Like, you know, it gets slightly different things for that. You know, there are changes and improvements and stuff that do exist in the entire thing. Just at the way things work. So, it's streamlining a lot of stuff. There are compatible things. I will tell you, there are compatible things out there, or things that could easily be changed. Like, I think the dragons are pretty close to each other. Other things are not. So, it's the thing that compatibility is a mixed bag. That's, I guess, the best way to describe this. Let me put the book down, because I think we don't have to talk about the book right now, and put me over in the center as I talk about this a little bit here. So, and I think this is the important way to talk about this entire thing. 3.0 and 3.5 are very compatible with each other. But 3.0 is not 3.5. 3.5 is still technically its own thing. It just has a high compatibility with the old thing. Similar to Pathfinder versus 3.5. Technically speaking, for a Pathfinder game, I could use a lot of 3.5 stuffs. You know what I use in Pathfinder games sometimes? First edition? 3.5 prestige classes. Because Pathfinder doesn't have as many prestige classes. They do have things that are equivalent to them. Archetypes or classes that might take the place of them. But there have been some things in 3.5 that have never been recreated. And if you look at them and a DM/GM analyzes them, sometimes they could say, I could look at it and say, you know what, that's fine for my game. The Fuglukin Lyrist, for example. I was in a Pathfinder game, and that is a 3.5 prestige class. A friend of mine was allowed to play it. It's basically supposed to be you're a rogue bard druid. And your druid and bard levels go up. Kind of like an enhanced version of a Mystic Theurge, which is both arcane and divine. It's pretty good, but it's not so super great that it breaks everything. And there are other stuff you could combine with it to make it more gross. The character itself was filled with shenanigans, was fun, but this is Blaze, a friend of mine who's been on the channel a bunch. So if you, on my Twitch channel especially, and has been in a few of my games that have popped up on the stream-based games that I put on the channel. His character, Lyle, was just fun. Wasn't super broken, was very, very support. But could do some things that were very interesting. The prestige class worked. Especially in the game we were in. So you can see, it's very similar. Lots of things in 3.0 still work. Some don't. Things like that magic ring for animal companions that I talked about don't work anymore because the rules for animal companion changed. And there are things related to stuff like damage reduction and stuff that have changed the rules, making them no longer work. And I think there's where the major concern comes in when you would mix and match the two of them. You can, but one side is always weaker than the other. Look at the classes. If I'm playing a 3.0 fighter, it's pretty much the same as a 3.5 fighter. Depending on my feat selection, I might be perfectly the same. Certain feat selections, like their version of power attack, might be better, but maybe I'm doing a sword and board fighter. It doesn't matter about that, power attack enhancement. That could be the case. And so others, like Ranger, is completely different. The massive improvements to Monk, Ranger, and many other classes show that this system is still different. I think that's the one thing that a lot of us that talk about 3.0 to 3.5 don't really talk about. It is mostly compatible new system. It is technically a second edition of 3rd edition. And this is not the first time D&D has done this. There was AD&D and AD&D 2nd edition. So this is a common thing that has happened before. That's, again, hearkening back to a discussion we're going to have in the future after this episode comes out on YouTube. Will be about 5th edition to the new, not 5.5, which it should be. Because it is. Because they're doing the exact same thing. It's mostly compatible. But if anyone uses the old stuff, they're at a disadvantage. I can use the old version of it. Well, I shouldn't. If it's not reprinted, then it's perfectly fine. You know, it hasn't been updated. Great. But on the surface, one's just better than the other. When 3.5 came out and it gave us all this stuff, 3 years later, it updated so much stuff and it made us, the people doing 3.0, have to update it. It fixed so many issues. It improved so many things. I have both sets of those books. At the time, I could afford them. I wasn't spending money on a lot of stuff. It's a different world now. What does that mean for a lot of these books that could come out and stuff like that? This is where we're going to have a discussion on 3.0, 3.5. But mechanically, you do really have to consider them a compatible different system. There are many other editions. I would mention Shadowrun 4th to 5th edition are just as compatible here. 5th edition has some unique changes. Things like skills are a lot different. The way you make your character. But on the surface, a lot of it's the same. It's exactly the same here. On the surface, it's the same. But there's just so many little things beneath the hood, which are quality of lives, improvements, balancing issues. That's what 3.5 did. And that's what we who bought into it saw. We saw when one of our friends bought it and could read through it, when the person that had a lot of extra spending money and wanted to, we saw how much it balanced, fixed, and improved things and could say, hey, this is worth it to switch into. Even after 3 years. Anyway, I hope you understand 3.5 a little bit more. If you saw my 3.0 show, episode, that'll be the best place to get a very good hint of all this. And there's a lot of little things in these editions that I'm not diving deep into, because that's not my purpose here today. It's the purpose to give you an idea how to play it, just a general idea how to build characters, and here I'm giving you an idea how things have evolved from the one to the other. Because it is, again, really compatible. There are plenty of feats, prestige classes, equipment, spells that I could pull right out of 3.0 and still use in my 3.5 game, and they'd be perfectly fine. They would. But I was running a 3.5 game, and someone brought to me something for 3.0. I'd take a good look at it first before I'd say yes or no. I'd say, come to me and get approval. Same with if I'm running a Pathfinder game, and someone tells me, I got this prestige class from 3.0 or 3.5 I'd love to play. Bring it to me. Let me see it. Let me determine if it's still fine to use. Or if it was balanced for that time period and no longer balanced for how things have been fixed nowadays. Anyway, I think that's a great place to leave off 3.5, 3.0 for now. We might dive deep into it another day, again, and certainly I think the discussion on comparing how that two systems came about versus our current situation, either the timing of this coming out on Twitch and on YouTube with 5th edition and its new 2nd version after 10 years. 10 years, which is far longer than the 3 of 3.0 to 3.5. Also, it wasn't that many years before afterwards 4th edition came out. So like 2008, like 5 years afterwards. Honestly speaking, we really should be due for a 6th edition. And they could have called this 6E and made it fairly compatible with 5E, just like so many other systems do between editions. And people would have probably been a lot better with a lot of stuff too. Maybe been more willing to buy it, especially if you do a lot more updates. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see how things evolve there. But that's, again, a different day's discussion. For now, I hope you learned a lot about 3.0, 3.5, and understand a little bit about more. The exact history of why it was made and things like that is something that maybe I'll dive deep into, the history as an episode of the evolution of the various systems. You know? That's a good question, is how all these have evolved and how it came about, and what's a lot of the scheduling behind it. Might be a discussion for the future. But anyway. Remember, please, check me out live on Twitch. I go live for Tabletop for every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Tuesday, Thursday, early afternoon around 1 o'clock, sometimes later, depending on family stuff and schedule. Saturdays at 11, again, similar kind of things. I do gaming streams on Twitch on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. Buccaneers is currently the live Pathfinder 1st Edition gameplay on Wednesday evenings. And then discussing Tabletop, which you can catch also up on YouTube every Saturday. And if you can't catch me live, and of course follow on Twitch, you can always subscribe on YouTube if you're watching there. Give a like, give a comment. You know, you could be like Worm and join me directly live in chat. You could just leave a comment on YouTube and mention about it. And tell me about, you know, how your difference between 3.0 and 3.5 is. Did you have that? Are you experienced with either of the editions? And if you did change between them, you know, what happened with that? Did you buy all the books again? Did you have one person buy them? What happened? You know, leave it in the comments. We can discuss. Are all of our histories related to this, for those of us that have it? Or maybe if you don't have experience with it, you know, your thoughts on this entire endeavor and how it evolved. There are, of course, other ways to check out what I'm doing. Discord, Twitter, both good places. I usually at least give my schedule, if not occasional random farts, brain farts, and thoughts. Yeah. Then I do have things like subscribing, Twitch, Patreon, and all that stuff, but do give more support if you want to give more support. But I have to update some of those things. Anyway, I'm going to say to all of you, have a great rest of your day. I hope you enjoy. See you for more Tabletop in the future. See you maybe for more D&D in the future. I don't know. If I come up with some good stuff to talk about, I'll chat about it. Certainly see you for all the other things that I talk about, though. And to those of you out there joining me both on Twitch and on YouTube, I bid all of you a grand and wonderful farewell.